Good morning, welcome back to a new class. Today we'll be covering anxiety. This is a state that affects almost every human being, every living creature as well. And there's a condition which is called GAD, which is basically prolonged levels of anxiety that turn into a specific condition called generalized anxiety disorder. Okay, if you have anxiety, if you have worry, tension, constant stress, for about 6 months, you often get diagnosed with this condition, and it's simply your body's in a state of constant fear for almost 6 months. And you can almost say that there's a trigger point when you flip into a state where your body cannot understand or cannot perceive when you're going to be anxious. So you're anxious almost all the time without any fear or threat in your environment. This is a condition, this is a natural state, and we'll understand the difference between two. We'll understand in nature how anxiety exists, in ancient civilizations, how they looked at the body and how anxiety was perceived, as well as we'll understand what is the one thing and what is something in our body that can actually inhibit anxiety, that can cancel out the effects of anxiety. And there is a certain chemical or hormone in our body that can do that. And I'll talk to you about that more as we progress in the class. So let's start with why we have anxiety in our body in the first place. Why has evolution or nature programmed fear into us? And this is known as the survival of the anxious. So imagine you're going through a jungle and there is a lake in front of you and you have to cross the lake onto the other side, and it's a bit dark. Okay, you can't really see properly, and essentially you're trying to get to your destination, but you have to cross a lake. Now you start going through the lake and then you sort of step on something. You don't really know what it is. You think it's a rock. So you step on it and you start walking even more further. Later on to realize that you've been eaten by a crocodile. Okay, so the rock was a crocodile, you didn't really know, so you were eaten by it, and pretty much you died, and that's when your genes end. But for example, if you were cautious, if you knew that this lake that you're walking through, if you had a fear within you that there might be crocodiles, and you go through the lake and then you touch something, you think it's a crocodile first, right, in your mind, you would run away, okay, and then you would eventually survive if you think about it. And although sometimes obviously you might get eaten up, but most of the time you would survive if you're fearful, right? So those genes survive. That's why this is known as the survival of the anxious, and hence our evolution throughout people who were fearful in nature survived the longest, okay? So survived the longest. And the people who were not fearful, right? Who were like careless, right? Careless, or who were not really worried, they didn't really survive because they perceived things as to be safe and normal in the natural environment, and hence they were predators. Obviously they were predators and they were eaten by them. And then this entire evolution died out and this one progressed on, which is why we have anxiety within us, which is why we think of the worst case scenario almost all the time. There's a threat in our environment, and you would sort of realize that obviously the threats in our environment have reduced over a period of time, but what has happened is we've got micro triggers, micro stresses in our environment, such as an alarm, such as the news, such as notifications, even like being liked on Instagram is sort of like an anxiety trigger. So these small things kind of perpetuate the feelings of worry, the feelings of stress. Why am I not liked by this person? Or why am I not getting this promotion? Or why are these people why are these people behaving wrong to me, etc. So you're constantly worrying all day, every day about people, about your job, your career, about finances, about what you're going to do next in life, and so on and so on. You're never at rest, okay? You never relax. You never feel safe in your life because our society is almost programmed to spike cortisol, which is your stress hormone, right? Society is designed to ensure that your cortisol stays high. You're constantly in panic mode, okay? Your body's in panic mode through notifications, news, right? Alarms, honks when you go on the road. That's why you have road rage, because there's a lot of stress on the road, right? On the road, when you're driving, right? Getting stuck in traffic is also a stressor. Okay, you have, in traditional modern society, you have all these threats. These threats are not, they're not survival threats, right? You can survive without the news. You can survive without notifications. You can survive without being angry on the road, essentially. All of these events, these micro stresses, they're not really life-threatening, and hence these should not have an impact on you. But they have an impact because your body's evolutionary design is anxiety, okay? Because your body's evolutionary design is constant worry, it's finding out, examining your environment for threat, that's why these micro stresses induce anxiety within you. Now, we'll go into understanding the symptoms of anxiety and generalized anxiety disorder specifically, because that is a condition. You can be stressed, right? You can be stressed in your daily environment, and stress is in fact good, or anxiety is good for you to fear when you're in the jungle and you don't want to get killed by someone. Right? Anxiety is there. It's a protective mechanism. Everything in your body is a protective mechanism. But if you overdo it, if your body's overstressed, if your body's over worrying, then it becomes a condition. Then basically through neuroplasticity, through your brain's natural functioning, natural development, it can program its habits. It can program and make stronger connections between fearful events. And those stronger circuits, stronger connections in your brain, then lead you into a loop, which then leads to GAD, generalized anxiety disorder, because you're essentially stuck in a loop of chemically wired brain neurons that are constantly looking out for stress, even though there is no threat in the environment. So when you're anxious, you sort of have to understand that anxiety is within time. It happens because of your past in the anticipation of your future. Okay, that's what you have to understand. Anxiety is in time. Okay, if there was no time in your reality, if there was no time, anxiety wouldn't exist because there is no future, okay? Anticipation is your code word. Anticipation. This is basically anxiety. Okay, anticipation of the future, which is essentially fearful. Okay, fear-inducing of future. Because in your past, there was a time in your past that was traumatic, or that was stressful, or that was, you don't want to be there, okay? So you don't want to be here, which is why you are anxious of the future, and essentially your anticipation of the events that are going to happen in the future cause anxiety. That is all what anxiety is, essentially. Now, because all of this, you get apprehension, you constantly worry. So we're going to look at the symptoms now. So worry, tension, you have a racing mind. These are the emotional symptoms. Racing mind. There is dread. You are constantly on edge. And you also feel disassociation, okay, with your surroundings. You can't really comprehend. You can't really perceive. You're kind of like blanked out by your environment. There's a blanking. And these are essentially the emotional symptoms of anxiety. When you are anxious, you also get physical symptoms, which include shortness of breath, heartbeat palpitations. So you have higher heartbeat. I'm just going to put an arrow, heartbeat. Okay, sweating, inability to sleep, no sleep. These are the physical symptoms of anxiety. And this is what you experience throughout. Now, this is momentarily, this is okay. We have fear inbuilt to protect us from dying. But if you're constantly having this every single day through the micro events, micro triggers, remember, anxiety can only happen if there's a trigger in the environment. If there's no triggers in your environment and you feel safe in your environment, you won't have anxiety. But if you have constant flood of triggers, events that are non-threatening, but your mind perceives it as threatening to your existence, you'll get these symptoms every single day, and they will keep building up, okay? Now I'll explain to you how the mind works, and when you're in anxiety, what actually happens in your mind. The lens from a brain, a chemical perspective, okay? Let's move on to understanding the amygdala first. What is the amygdala? I've also discussed this in the last class. The amygdala is your fear center. Okay, there's a brain over here like this. Just imagine this is a brain. Somewhere over here, you have the amygdala. Okay, which is your panic alarm button. Okay, so if there is a threat in the environment, this gets switched on. As soon as this is switched on, your body's nervous system switches from parasympathetic nervous system, which is your rest and digest, relaxed state, to your sympathetic nervous system, which is your fight or flight state, where you essentially run or you kind of fight your threat. So in order for you to run away quickly from your threat or to fight your threat, what you do is your body essentially has a rush of blood, a rush of adrenaline in your body, which gives you energy. There's cortisol, which spikes your blood sugar levels to give you instant hit of energy. Okay, and essentially your digestion and your reproductive system and your immune system shut off because they're not needed for survival. Okay, all the mechanisms in your body that are needed for survival are switched on with the amygdala in the sympathetic nervous system. So I'm just going to put S, sympathetic nervous system, SNS, and then we have PNS, which is your parasympathetic, which is the relaxed state. Relax. In today's day and age, our bodies are constantly existing in this plane, SNS. Okay, we're hardly in the parasympathetic nervous system, as I discussed, because of the earlier triggers. Now, understanding this is the switch. This part, your amygdala, which is your threat detecting mechanism, grow. Okay, this can grow. And the more you're in this state, the more it grows. And the more it grows, the more you're going to be in a hyper-vigilant, hyperactive, restless mind state. Okay? The reason why this needs to grow is in order to protect you. There's thresholds in your body, and every time you meet that baseline, every time you meet or you cross over that baseline, or you meet a certain threshold, your body expands to that, your body grows to that, so it can ensure that next time when you meet that particular event or scenario, your body has the ability to meet that particular event at that level. So if there's a huge stress in your life, and your body's constantly in stress response, your amygdala will continue to grow in order to meet those stresses at that level for you to survive. Now, one thing you also have to understand about the amygdala is whether it's real threat or imagined threat, it's the same for your mind. And then we have the hippocampus. This is, you can think about it as your memory storage. This ensures that it communicates to the amygdala. Have you seen this before? If there's a threat in the environment, have you seen this before? And if it's a negative memory, it communicates to the amygdala to turn on, switch on the sympathetic nervous system. Switch this on. So this is in constant communication. It's like a memory storage area. And it ensures that through your past experiences, you don't end up in the same stress situation again. Hence, for protection, it communicates with the amygdala. Then you have the prefrontal cortex, which is just in front of your brain. Frontal cortex. Okay, so I'm just going to put PC over here, and then it's going to prefrontal cortex. This is your logical and rational thinking part of the brain. Okay? This ensures that the amygdala gets switched off if you feel safe. And guess what happens? This gets turned off when the amygdala switches your nervous system into sympathetic nervous system. As soon as the prefrontal cortex is switched off, you can't think rationally, you can't make decisions. Hence, when you're worried and you're stressing and you're restless, you make the wrong decisions. It's simply because your rationality, this part of the brain, is switched off because it's not needed for survival. All you need for survival is a tunnel vision to safely get to an area where you feel there is no threat. Okay, imagine this is expanding, right? When this expands, this becomes smaller, okay? If you're constantly in a stressful scenario, if you're constantly anxious, your prefrontal cortex can shrink. It becomes smaller. Your brain, it's literally neuroplasticity. Your brain has the ability to remodel itself. If you think a certain way, your brain will model itself that way. If you're always consuming negative news and you're never consuming positive news, you'll start believing the world is a negative place. Okay? And that's because your brain is remodeling that whole situation for you. Next one is hypothalamus. This part of your brain is essentially the gateway. So when your amygdala sends fear into your whole body, into your nervous system, fear, panic attack, that happens through hypothalamus. Hypothalamus is essentially the switch between sympathetic and parasympathetic. Okay, so amygdala essentially communicates to your hypothalamus, communication, okay, that your body's in threat, and when your body's in threat, it will switch your parasympathetic nervous system to sympathetic nervous system. This is like your gateway, essentially. This prepares your body for action. This is the switch, this is the trigger, this alarm system. Here, the hippocampus is essentially your memory, which ensures that past experiences ensure your safety. Prefrontal cortex is your rational decision making, which shuts off when you're in threat response to threat. Okay, so that all in all, that is an understanding of what goes through your mind or your brain when you're in an anxious state. Now we'll look at the chemicals that are involved in your brain. And this is very simple. I'll go through this very quickly. So the first chemical we have is adrenaline. This basically makes your blood vessels constrict. It increases blood flow, reroutes blood flow. Okay, so rerouting. And then there is an expansion of airways. Okay, so there's more air traveling through, there's more blood traveling through, there's sweating, there is high heartbeat. Okay, heartbeat, there is sweating to ensure the continuous cooling of the body, so you don't get too heated quickly. You essentially keep cooling while you're running. Then there is a decrease in pain perception. So when there is a cut in your body and you're running, you won't feel that pain as much as you were if you were in a relaxed state. Okay, so decrease in pain perception, high blood pressure, high heartbeat, BP, sweating, expansion of airways, and increased blood flow is because of adrenaline. It's called epinephrine as well, another chemical term for adrenaline. Then you have cortisol. Next one is cortisol. This spikes blood sugar to ensure you have a surge of energy in your body, and it shuts off non-survival mechanisms, so digestion, reproduction, and immunity. And it ensures that you are constantly in a state of stress state. As long as you're not safe, your body stays in a state of stress to ensure survival. Okay? All of these mechanisms are there in your body for survival. And then finally, we have a calming chemical. And then finally, we have a calming chemical known as GABA. And then finally, we have a calming chemical known as GABA. This is very important, this one. This is known as gamma aminobutyric acid. Okay, and it's a calming chemical messenger in your brain that ensures that your mood is regulated, you can sleep well, you're not in a stress state. Essentially, this relieves anxiety and fear. And you can sort of think of your chemicals as like a seesaw, and I'll explain to that what that is later on, but just imagine as soon as cortisol, adrenaline go up, this comes down, and this, I'll just draw the seesaw for you, like that. So, and when this is up, when GABA is up, when oxytocin in your body is up, these chemicals are down, and you feel much safer, much safe and calm. And this is a state to be in instead of this one, okay? This is an emergency state, right? It's only needed when there's an actual real threat in your environment, not when there's micro triggers. Because of society, you're in this state constantly, and which is why you have inflammation, you have gut issues, you have cognitive difficulties. The society is designed in such a way to make you unhealthy, essentially. But guess what? Nature is designed, if you're out in nature, and I'll explain to you the great mechanisms that nature has for us. The more closer you are to nature, the less inflammation in your body, the more calm you are, the least amount of cortisol, the least amount of adrenaline in your body, and the more GABA and oxytocin. I'll explain oxytocin as well. It's the most crucial hormone in the body when it comes to anxiety. So that is all in all the chemicals in your brain. And anxiety GABA is very much less, and all of these two are, in particular, are the highest. The questions should come to your mind: how do you take care of each one of these parts? How do you ensure that these parts stay healthy in your brain? And the first one, the amygdala actually requires the release of oxytocin. I'll explain what oxytocin is. So let's do that. This is the love hormone, or the cuddling hormone. And the reason why the amygdala needs that is in order to feel safe. Okay, a body to feel safe, it needs oxytocin. This is the most important chemical in your body, which is your love/cuddling chemical. Now, this tells the amygdala to switch off its functions, to unlearn fear, switch off functions because you're safe. I'll explain more of the functions as we progress through this class of oxytocin. But for now, just understand that for the amygdala to stay healthy, you need safety, and that can be done through deep breathing, cuddling, love, good relationships, good social connections. Okay, there's more other ways for oxytocin to release, which I'll explain to you soon. But for now, just understand that amygdala is directly affected by oxytocin. Hippocampus. Now, this area requires cardio exercise. So your memory, past memory, in order to ensure that you have good cognitive function memory, you need activity. You need movement, specifically cardio, which is called aerobic exercise, and omega-3 fatty acids to stay healthy. Prefrontal cortex, it needs rest, meditation, mindfulness, relaxation, sleep, cognitive challenges like puzzles, a memory game, etc. Anything that challenges the mind builds new neurons. Decision making strengthens. That's how to keep the prefrontal cortex healthy. For the hypothalamus, you need predictability and rhythm. What does that mean? It means to stay in the circadian rhythm, go to sleep at the right time, wake up at the right time, right, with the sun. And predictability, ensuring that you eat at the right time to ensure that there is fluctuations in blood sugar levels don't really happen and they stay at a minimum. There needs to be a healthy timing of your meals, and you should eat that at the same time. Meals and sleeping, and ensuring that the meals are clean and healthy, so not processed foods that can spike up blood sugar levels, which can again affect the hypothalamus, put you in the sympathetic nervous system. Which is why you would almost see when you eat stimulating foods, nervous system stimulating foods like high sugar or caffeine, these all stimulate the nervous system into the sympathetic nervous system, which again puts you in a stress response. So number one thing for anxiety is if you drink a lot of coffee or if you have a lot of sugar, putting that down, right? Reducing it, minimizing it as much as you can, because that will only trigger, not that that's the only cause of anxiety. Some people directly blame it on your diet, but it's not really that, right? There's more factors that are involved in anxiety. Moving on to oxytocin. The reason why I want you to understand, make this your God when it comes to anxiety, is in ancient civilizations, whether it was Ayurveda or Egyptians or Greek medicine, okay, or Chinese medicine, okay, so TCM, even Mesoamericans, and I explained to you what they all had in common. Okay, one thing in common, they believed and they had a theory that the heart is much bigger or much more important than the brain. Okay, sorry, not bigger, important than the brain. Okay, the importance of the heart is, okay, heart. It's much more important than the brain. And the reason why is the heart, these people, they thought the heart as the sun, the source of all light. I'm just going to try and do sun. So just imagine there's a sun, and around it you have the entire cosmos in the orbit, and then you have each of the planets around on the orbit. All the planets are in the orbit, and that's what the heart was meant to be. It was seen as the fragment of the sun's fire. Right over here in the center, you have the heart, around which your body, entire body, revolves, your organs, your blood supply. Because of the sun, there is energy, right? Into the entire cosmos that we live in. Same as for the heart. The heart is the pumping blood. It's the energy. Blood is energy. Pumping blood throughout the entire body, giving the body energy. And this is the center. This is where your soul, your mind, and your physical body meet. This is what these ancient civilizations believed in. It's the seat of the soul. I'm just going to write it down. Seat of the soul. Your emotions, your memory, your intelligence are from the heart. That's what they believed. This is where your body's center is. It's the emperor, the king of your body. Okay, if the king dies, and the entire civilization or the kingdom also falls. Okay, that's what the ancient Chinese believed in. Here we have one understanding that it's the seat of the soul. Seat means it's not the soul, but it's the seat of the soul. It's where your soul sits. That's why when you have things like, oh, I have this feeling that I really like this person. I have this feeling that this is going to be good for me. This opportunity is so good. And it turns out to be really good. You know, you have this feeling within you, this instinct, nature of your body. It's within your heart. Okay. And that is what communicates to the entire body. Your heart is more, you can say your brain is rational, but your heart is more intuitive, right? It tells you where to go, even though your rational mind can't really understand, can't really dictate or rationalize it in form. But if you listen to your heart, if you follow your heart and guidance, that's why everybody says to follow your heart. All these people, that's what they believed in. The heart is the center point of your memory, your thinking, your intelligence, your imagination. And this is where the mind, the soul, and the physical, the spirit, you can say. Spirit, you can also say the spirit is almost infinite. So the entire universe is within you. The spirit, it's essentially experiencing the body. And where that is experiencing happening is through your heart. The universe is experiencing life through your heart. And this is physical as well, okay? Physical body, the blood, nervous system, etc. That's why there's a direct connection when you're anxious or when you're worried, direct connection with the heart. Your heart, it sort of beats faster, it gets scared, it's worried, right? That's why they believe that there's a flooding of palpitations, a flooding of blood in the heart, right? Flooding on your body. That's what the Egyptians believed. That's how they perceived the heart, right? Everything is happening to the heart, not in the brain. Even though the brain is a channel, right, through which processing happens, the heart is where it's all at, it's the core, okay? Now, the reason why I'm talking about the heart so much is because these ancient civilizations talked about it as being the primary source of our body and our creation. Oxytocin, the chemical that we just discussed earlier, has a direct connection to the heart. Okay? This love cuddling chemical, this is the chemical that switches off the fear, that makes you feel safe, that makes you feel loved, that makes you feel like you're one with someone. Okay? It tells the amygdala, it can also shrink the amygdala. It can also make your heart literally repair. If you have enough oxytocin in your body, your tissues in your heart repair. Guess what this does? Guess what cortisol does to your heart? It damages your tissues. It damages blood vessels around your heart, okay, and because of inflammation. But oxytocin, there's an expansion. There's no constriction in your body. There's an expansion. Your blood vessels sort of dilate. They become relaxed. They become easy. Okay, this is where you unlearn your fear. This is where you feel safe. Okay, the more oxytocin in your body, the less stress, the less cortisol. Again, as I explained earlier, the seesaw, right? So we have a seesaw. So the more O you have in your body, the less C cortisol you'll have. Oxytocin also lowers your blood pressure. It keeps your digestion healthy, so repairs gut motility, restores gut motility. If you have leaky gut, oxytocin, a good amount of oxytocin can actually heal and restore your gut. That's how powerful this cuddling chemical or love chemical is. Probably one of the most powerful hormones in the body, but we don't give it much significance because we don't really know about it. But once you get to know about it, and once you make the connection with the heart and the ancient civilizations, you can actually think that this is what keeps your heart healthy. This is also what releases nitric oxide in your blood vessels, and your blood vessels dilate. Remember, expansion, opening up, your heart opening up, that's always a result of oxytocin, right? You're literally, like, whenever you're restricted, you'll contract, okay? even if you've seen insects, or if you've seen someone getting attacked, like animals, sort of animals, they kind of constrict. They get stressed. If you've seen an insect, when you touch it, right, it will contract. It will go smaller because it's scared. It doesn't know how to escape. It will try and escape, but when you try and touch it, it will contract. Same with us. When we are in stress mode, or when we're not relaxed, our blood vessels, our body, it contracts. Okay, we don't want to get out. We don't want to go anywhere. We don't want to experience life, etc. But when we're full of life, when we're full of energy within us, when we're relaxed, right? Not only does our digestion open up, right? Our digestion opens up, we can have food, okay? We have this opening up of the heart, and it's the same with people, right? With the right people, your heart opens up. With the wrong people, your heart constricts. It doesn't want to share information, okay? It doesn't feel safe. And all of this is happening because of oxytocin. So heart repair, direct connection with heart repairing, tissue repairing. There's emerging research that is suggesting that oxytocin can repair the tissues in your heart. That's how powerful this is. No wonder why ancient civilizations, they were very smart. They knew, right? Follow your heart. Be intuitive. Be in connection with the divine. The heart is the seat of the soul, where you have the divine connection to the universe. Okay? And I'll explain, I know this is a very esoteric and a very hard to understand concept, but I'll explain that to you in a future video. But for now, just understand that the ancient civilizations were right. They knew what they were talking about. They knew to give importance to intuition rather than rationality, because there's some guidance, there's divine intervention. You're in union with the earth. And I'll tell you what helps oxytocin. When you're in water, when you're swimming, that helps release oxytocin. It lowers your cortisol levels. You're closer to the earth. When you're touching soil, right, literally, when you're touching soil, there's chemicals in your soil that tell your brain, that tell your heart, it's in a safe position. You're in a safe environment. That releases oxytocin. Touching the earth, hugging a tree, right? Hugging itself, a person, long periods of time, hugging a person helps release oxytocin, but also hugging a tree releases oxytocin. Looking at animals, or when you're staring at a dog in the eyes, obviously it should be like out of love, right? Staring at a human deeply with the eyes, right? That releases oxytocin, okay? When you're cuddling a dog, right? That's why people get pets, because they feel anxious in their life. Intuition tells them to get a dog. Okay, it's not like some people have this weird feeling, right, that they want to get a dog, they want to have a pet, and the reason why that is because their inner guidance, their heart feels unsafe, and to reduce that anxiety, to reduce that's their heart guiding them to get a pet. It's very beautiful. Pets are one of the most effective ways to also release oxytocin. Swimming in the ocean, hugging a tree, making love, intimacy, relationships, and singing, humming, putting your hand on your heart, in fact, right over here in the sternum is around here. So putting your hand on your heart for deeper periods of time, even taking a slow, deep breath while doing that, okay? So you're like this expansion, okay? The deeper your breaths, the more relaxed your body is. And you can literally feel oxytocin releasing in your body. You can literally feel the relaxation, the love when you touch around here, okay, in the sternum. Also singing in a choir, and weighted blankets, deep tissue massage, right? All of these are ways to help oxytocin release in your body. So it's just not, you don't have, like, I know, like, you would imagine that you need a person to do this with, but you literally have nature to do it with, okay? That's how beautiful and that's how powerful nature is. What does this indicate? If you think about it, being in nature literally releases oxytocin, right? Being in water, touching the earth, literally going for a hike, seeing green, right? Or seeing the sky, seeing blue. There's something called the blue mind effect. All of these are factors of oxytocin. What does that indicate? That indicates that nature loves you, okay? Nature opens your heart up. Nature allows you to feel life, to be one with this universe, this cosmos, okay? Nature is an indication of that. That's why it does oxytocin to you. That's why it releases a lot of oxytocin in your body. You know, you're not indoors, okay? The more you're indoors, like if you look at it from a macro level, the more indoors you are, the more constricted your blood vessels are. You know, they're not expanding, they're not relaxed. It's not infinite, you know? So to understand what makes you relaxed, what makes you at peace, what reduces your cortisol, what reduces your inflammation in your body, it's nature. Nature loves you for who you are. That's why it has these entire mechanisms in place to ensure you're healthy. This chemical literally makes you healthy. It makes your heart beautiful. Okay? And I know this may not make sense scientifically, but I've literally shared the scientific reason with you, but there are deeper connections with the universe that we still don't understand, right? Science still cannot comprehend the 40,000 neurons we have in our body, for example, just in our heart, in fact. We have 40,000 neurons in our heart. Our heart is an entire endocrine system in itself. I bet you didn't know that, right? The heart, separate from the brain, even though it communicates with the brain, right? The heart has its own endocrine system. So individually, as well as in communication with the brain, the heart is very powerful. If you want to help GAD, generalized anxiety disorder, it's not like, I didn't discuss any medications over here, right? But they use benzodiazepines, and it's all temporary. That's what I'm saying. It's all temporary. It's just chemical suppressions in your, like, science looks at the body at a very individualistic level. And I have to explain to you through individualistic, scientific mechanisms in the body. It's because that's how you understand. But there's only one help. There's only one source of love. There's only one source of healing, and it's all in nature. We wouldn't have, like, if you study ancient civilizations, they were in nature almost all the time. They were not in labs. In nature is where you make the most amount of discoveries. It's where you make the most amount of, it's where you're the most creative. It's because you're in connection with the divine, okay, with the cosmos, okay? And the more you are in nature, the more you feel safe, the more you feel loved, and the more you can make better decisions in life, okay? Clarity comes from a peaceful mind. It doesn't come from a chaotic, panic, worry mind, okay? Nature makes you present. That's the greatest learning that you can experience when you're in nature. Go for a swim in the ocean, okay? Do some gardening. All of this, go even on the mountains. If you just go on the mountains, for example, you see the greatness of the mountains, okay? Sit by the river, look at the river, stare at the river, stare at the sky, okay? Look at the moon, right? Do some sunbathing if you can, with some sunscreen on. Do some sunbathing. But it's all there. Literally sit in the sand, you'll feel amazing. Have your body touch the sand, you'll feel instantly relaxed. And it's all there to make you present. Nature doesn't care about the future or the past. It doesn't exist. The present is what is infinite. It's what is the most important thing. And society, this world that we live in that has been created, okay, this internet world that we live in that has been created, all it's doing is making you worry about your future because of your past. It tells you what you've done wrong, why you're not good enough, why you're, in comparison to someone else, you're not, you're doing bad, whatever. It's all there for you to live either in the future or in the past. Either have memories because of your camera. Imagine if you didn't have a camera, right? How would your brain be? Your brain would be able to create its own experiences through revisiting memory, which is not in the phone, which is in your mind. So these capabilities, you are literally a superhuman. It's just that you've been degraded by the chemicals in the society, the triggers in the society that have been built and constructed to make you feel not good enough. Whereas nature loves you. The more you're in nature, the more you love yourself, okay? The more you feel relaxed, the more you're out of depression, the more you're out of anxiety. And I'm not saying go to the jungle and get like eaten by a tiger. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about nature as it is, right? Going out, experiencing new things makes your prefrontal cortex grow. Amygdala becomes smaller. Love nature because you'll end up loving yourself. The more there is love in you, the more you feel safe. The more you feel safe, the less anxiety you have. All right. One last thing I want to end with is the story of Krishna and Arjun. If you've ever heard of Mahabharata, I've been lucky to grow up in I've been lucky to be raised in a Hindu family and with stories, a lot of imagination, a lot of peace because of those stories and imagination. Okay, and the story of Arjun is very significant in almost everybody's lives. Like it's a metaphor to understand life at a deeper level. Okay? And I raised this thing earlier about how anxiety is within time, right? Future and past. Okay, it's not in the present moment. Okay, there is fear in the present moment, but anxiety exists in the past or the future. Okay, you can get a panic attack in the present moment, but it's because of your anticipation of the future is you get an anxiety attack in the present moment. Okay? And I didn't explain, like, obviously there are things that you can stop anxiety attacks, etc. I didn't explain that because to me, what's important is explaining, like you can find this information about what helps anxiety from a medical perspective on the internet. I'm not here to explain that. I'm here to explain how nature is connected to you, okay? The story of Arjun and Krishna when they were in the battlefield. And Arjuna, before the battle started, he gets a panic attack. He drops his bow down, his limbs start shaking. He starts worrying about thinking, how will he kill his brothers on the battlefield? He's literally, the army, there's two armies, right? There's the Pandavas, which is Arjun's brothers, and then there's the Kauravas, which is the enemies, his guru, his other cousins, etc. on the battlefield. This is one of the greatest wars in human history, for example. This story, Arjuna is with Krishna, and Krishna takes Arjuna into the middle of the battlefield, right? And that's where Krishna gives the knowledge of consciousness, okay? Of what consciousness is, what life is, what you're meant to do in life. And the reason why Krishna does that, the reason why Krishna gives this knowledge is to ensure that Arjuna maintains his duty, fulfills his duty. Now, there's a lot of concepts in this story. There's a lot of knowledge in the story. This whole Bhagavad Gita, which is written from the teachings of Krishna. But I want you to understand all of the stories, right? They're metaphors to understand human life. They're not, like, it's not literal. You have to actually examine what they're saying and sit with it, right? Sit with the knowledge that is being written and you're reading it. You have to meditate on this knowledge because you won't get it from, if you read the Bhagavad Gita from a very linear perspective, right? Objective perspective, you won't really get it. You have to imagine it. Okay? Imagination is power. Okay? So Arjuna is standing in the middle of, this is Arjuna, okay? He's got a bow, right? And he drops his bow, and there's like a chariot, okay? He drops his bow on the floor. He starts shaking because over here is his army of his cousins and his guru as well, his elders. Okay, he's actually going to kill all of them. That's his duty. Krishna is his chariot. I'm just going to draw like a peacock feather over here because that indicates Krishna. The chariot, these horses here. Essentially, this is his brothers over here. Like without Arjun, the fight is almost impossible, right? Like they need Arjun to win. They need Arjun in order to win the fight. Okay, because Arjun is one of the greatest warriors in history. So can you imagine one of the greatest warriors getting a panic attack right before the war? It's kind of unique to understand that you are the greatest warrior in history and you're getting a panic attack right before your duty, which is essentially war. And it's valid, right? Like he's worrying about what ifs, like his guilt that he's going to live with after he kills everyone. Like any person on earth would get this panic attack. In fact, he took the greatest load on him to get this panic attack. So it's quite a stressful situation to be in, right? You're killing your own people for the state of dharma, which is for the state of the duty, for the civilization to be of good. That's why this has to happen. So Krishna tells Arjun, the story is, Krishna stops the chariot within the battlefield in the middle, and he tells Arjun, Bhagavad Gita, he tells what it means to be human, what is consciousness, what is the mind, and in brief scenario. So I'll explain to you a few things. The first thing is attachment to an outcome. That's what anxiety is also. It's the attachment to an outcome. This is you here. And this is the outcome. You're anticipating that in your mind already, you're attached to it, okay? You're attached to that outcome and hence you're worrying about it. Let's say you have an exam, right? 10 days before you get anxiety, you get a panic attack, for example, because you think that you may not perform well. What will happen if you perform well, etc., etc. All your thoughts are in future of the anticipation of the outcome. But if you just focused on your action, okay? If you just focused on being the best that you can be and not caring about the outcome, right? Because it's not really in your control, okay? Not in control. That's what Krishna teaches. The outcome is not in your control. What is in your control is your actions. For example, imagine you're on a boat, right? You're sailing and you have a destination. You want to get to that destination, but in that journey, you experience some wild weather. You don't have control over the weather, right? Manifestation doesn't tell you, oh, you can control the weather. No, you don't have control. You have control over how you sail your boat, how you can be the best on that boat on that day. That's what it means by taking action. It's the yin and yang. There are part of your life which is in control, and there's part of your life which is not in control. Okay? There's factors in your life that you dictate, and there's factors in your life that you don't dictate. Okay? Krishna told Arjun that the war is predetermined, right? The war, they're all going to die anyway. Okay? If Arjun doesn't kill them, the war will still happen, and they will die anyway. The outcome is that they're going to die. But Arjun is an instrument. This is what you have to understand. You are an instrument through which divinity is happening, through which your soul is happening. Your heart is an instrument. You're being used by divine intervention to fulfill duty on this earth. So everything you do in your life, if you follow your heart, it's very inspiring. Okay, it's very energizing if you follow your heart. If you do things that you love doing, it's very energizing. Like, you get energy out of doing it, and you get motivation, you get momentum out of doing what you love to do. But because of our society today, we've been forced into doing things that we're not meant to be doing. We've been forced by other people to run in the same direction as everybody, to do the same things as everybody, to buy the same houses, to have the cars, etc., etc., etc. Because everybody's chasing different goals, and it's not aligned with them. It's not aligned with the heart. That's why you have depression. That's why you have anxiety, is because you're not aligned with your heart. Okay? This is your center point. This is where everything meets. When there's alignment, you experience life to the fullest. Okay? And it's all going to come connecting together now. You know? Krishna is like, you don't have to worry about them. Just focus on what you are, who you are, be the best, and that's all you have to do. You just have to do your work. That's it. You don't care about the outcome. One other thing is Krishna lifts Arjun's consciousness out of the battlefield. And you'll notice if you read the story, the battlefield pauses. There's a pause in time. There is a bird flying up here. Okay? It stops. The bird stops flying. The time hasn't stopped on that field. Okay? Time hasn't stopped on that field. But for Arjun and Krishna had to raise his consciousness in order to make him experience the universe. There was a time where, at the end of the teachings, when Krishna turns into the universe, infinity, infinite dimensions, everything, all at once. That's what Krishna turns into, to show Arjun how insignificant his mind is, his ego is. Because of our egos, because of ahankara, our ego, ahankara is the Sanskrit word for ego, because of our egos, we feel anxiety. Because we make certain worries in our life that we make so big that they become our entire world, and we only think about that. You're sleeping, you're thinking about that, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not really important. Your day-to-day worries are not really important. That's what worry in itself is not really important. Okay? That's what Krishna is teaching Arjun, that don't worry. Just do your thing. Okay? Just do what your heart says, do what you're meant to do, and it will all come together. Krishna has to raise his consciousness out of the plane that we live in, okay, which is this current reality, which we're stuck with time. Time is the concept that our human bodies are defined by. It's stuck. For us to experience high dimensions, for us to experience the universe, for us to experience out-of-body experiences, we have to transcend time. That's what nature does to us. When we're present, there's a transcendence of time. Okay? When we're in deep meditative states, there's a transcendence of time. When we're taking psychedelics, there's a transcendence of time. When we're dreaming, there's a transcendence of time. All of these factors that transcend time get us out of the plane that we're in, the 3D, 4D world that we live in right now, four-dimensional. Fourth dimension is the time factor, 3D with 3D objects, right? So to get us out of this 3D reality, right, our mind, to get us out, we use time, okay? We use time to transcend this dimension, and that's what, and it's so beautifully shown in the battlefield that literally Krishna stops time for Arjun. Okay? The time is still existent in the battlefield, but for Arjun, the time has stopped. And that's when Arjun is given the knowledge, okay? In psychedelics, time stops. Meditation, time stops. Near-death experiences, time stops. That's when your consciousness is out of this plane and you have higher intervention. You have divine intervention of your consciousness. You experience oneness with the world, with the universe. Okay, you're not confined. And for us to receive that greater knowledge, that's what Krishna did. He showed what consciousness is to Arjun. And it's literally infinity. And because of this vastness, right? Because Arjun realized how insignificant his mind is, and that Arjun is one with Krishna, he's not separate. Okay? We have this thinking because of our religion, because of the society we live in. Again, there is separation. We think that there is separation of our consciousness, okay, of our soul. But our soul there is no separation. And I'll show you how. Imagine waves, right? You see waves on an ocean, okay? Okay? Waves on an ocean, right? This is the ocean underneath, okay? And this is what consciousness is, okay? This is what our soul is. And this is what our minds is. Okay, the waves are the mind. Different minds of different people, right? Everybody has a different mind, everybody has a different memory, a different experience of life, okay? But underneath is the ocean, okay? Underneath is our entire consciousness. We're one with the universe. There is no separation. There is no separation between Krishna and Arjun. It's the same consciousness. You think there's a separation with you and God. There is no separation. I've explained in different classes as well how you're one with God, okay? How you're one with the universe. That's why you experience love when you're in ocean, because love is a unifying force, okay? Love makes you come together. Right? It's a unifying force. The greatest thing that you can understand how everything is unified is simply by understanding the elements of the earth. Fire, water, air, earth. There's one sun, there's one moon, right? There is one air through which we all breathe. There's one space we all share. There's one water we all drink from. Air is not separate. Air is the greatest unifying force of our earth. Everybody's breathing the same air. Through the elements, you can see the mind makes you separate from nature. The mind makes you different from everybody. But when you come together, when you go to the core, which is your elements, your heart, right? Your organs are pretty much the same in every human being. Different sizes, but you can almost, not even different sizes, but like size approximately the same to the human body. The body is made in the image of God. When Krishna is explaining the Bhagavad Gita, he is literally telling you the solution to all your worries and tensions in life. It's to let go and surrender your actions. Okay? Surrender your mind. That's why when you chant, that's why everybody has an amazing feeling when they're chanting. It's because it's oxytocin release. They feel one, they feel loved. It's all the same. It's all the same. Time, anxiety is within time. It's a barrier to our plane that we live on. Our body, our consciousness is much greater than that. It's vast than that. Your worries are very insignificant, especially to your survival. That email, that notification, it's not going to end your life. And that's what happens. A lot of people, they think it's the biggest thing in their world, and they just keep thinking about that, and they get stuck in a loop, and they can't really undo it. But love, right? There is love, right? There is love. Krishna is nature, and Arjun is human. Okay, there's a divine union. Okay, Arjun is experiencing what consciousness is. That's why when you take psychedelics, that's why when you do meditation, that's why when you're in deep sleep, all your worries go away. Yeah? Because you're relaxed. right? The made-up world, if you look at your phone, it's like a 2D world, right? You forget about time when you're on your phone. It's a 2D world simulation that has been made to constrict your mind, right? To put you down into a lower dimension. Okay, so when you consume your 2D food or your 2D world, right, when you're constantly getting that information into your mind, you think that it's the greatest thing in the world, right? You think it's the most important thing in your world. Someone not messaging you on time, someone not liking your story, someone sending you a bad email. You think it's an insane amount of threat to your life, but it's actually not. It's the most insignificant thing. Get out of your phone, experience life, live in nature more, love people around you, get away from the people who are negative, very important. You need to separate, ensure that you come out of love, and you'll get that. You get your energy from nature. Nature is your greatest strength, so spend more time, get out of your home. Literally, just go out for a walk and you'll feel way much like, look at the sky. You know, like we're literally like zombies right now, looking at our phone every single day, like on our, you know, like heads down, etc. It's insane. Like if you think about it, it's not made. We're not made to be like that. We're made to be in nature. Look up at the sky. Look at the divinity of the entire, even if it's a black sky, look at the stars. You know, there's beauty in the sky. There's clouds that make different shapes. It's so beautiful. It's insane. There's birds flying around. You know, how amazing is that we live in this beautiful world that we don't even pay attention to, and hence we get stressed by the most insignificant notification on our phone. You know, there's dimensions to this. There's planes to this. So I hope you enjoyed this session. Make oxytocin your goal in life. Make nature your goal in life. Work to survive. Don't make survival your work. Things as you seem big or important are not really important. Okay, what's important is how much time you spend in nature. That's what's most important. Follow your heart. Follow your instincts. Make your feelings the most important thing. Okay, if you feel someone is good, be with them. If you don't feel someone is good, move away from them. There's no obligation. You know, don't let the weight of the society, the expectations of the society, the mechanical society that we live in, the materialistic society that we live in, don't make that weight, burden, weigh you down. Lift that burden off. Free yourself from expectations by spending time in nature. It's the most anti-matrix thing you can do. It's the most, like sitting and doing nothing in nature is the most anti-corporate, it's the most rebellious thing you can do, but it's the most greatest thing. That gives you power. Nature gives you power. It gives you knowledge. It gives you creativity. It gives you insights that you would not ever get when you're stuck inside a lab or an office. The greatest scientific discoveries in the world happened in nature that never happened in a lab. That's how powerful nature is. Make the most of it. You have an abundance around you. You have the sky, you have the moon, you have the sun, you have the water, you have the nature. Be with it. Your anxiety, your fears will come down. You feel much safer. The more you feel safer, the more clear your mind is. The more clear your mind is, the better, the more beautiful your life is. Okay? The slower your thoughts are. Right? The more present you are, the more time you have on this earth. Okay? So be present, love yourself, and I hope you enjoyed this session. Have a great rest of your day. And next session, we'll be talking about type 2 diabetes.